Hi everybody, this is Yurii from ORIL, and it means that we have another amazing episode of our Innovation Blueprint podcast. And today we have another guest, another professional with remarkable 25 years of experience in technologies and more than 15 years specifically in the real estate sector in PropTech technologies. And our today's guest is David Blumenfeld. Give a big round of applause. Yay! So, David, say hello to our crowd.
Hey, Yuri, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. I appreciate your time. And, David, today we're going to talk about technology, about the services that your company provides, about the future, how we see the future, how you see the future for your company, and then only. And let's start from the simple thing. I went through the profile of your company on LinkedIn, and that's what I read there. Our combined experience in Westfield Labs, early stage startups, and the Golden State Warriors give us unique insights into the technology that's being adopted across malls, retailers, stadiums, and airports. I have no idea what does it mean. Can you please explain me exactly what the Next Rivet company does and what kind of services do you guys provide?
Well, it sounds like we need to adjust our LinkedIn so more people understand it. Um, in a nutshell, we're providing digital innovation services for physical spaces. That's the easiest way to think about it. And our core target and our core customer base are kind of retail real estate, commercial real estate, multifamily residential, retailers as well. But our bread and butter is really kind of in the shopping center and retailer space. And really, it's, like I said, our focus is on practical digital innovation, where instead of just talking about cool ideas that you can implement, we're really focused on how do you actually execute and get those done. So, from a practical example perspective, you may work with a big traditional consulting firm as a shopping center, and they drop a beautiful 200-page PowerPoint off on your desk, and maybe more beautiful than we'll ever create. But at the same time, you then still have the problem. Once you have this great PowerPoint and these great ideas, you still have the problem of how do you then go and execute on those ideas? Because that's where a lot of those companies tend to leave off. That's really kind of where our sweet spot comes in, where we'll help you ideate, we'll certainly help you build a strategy, but our sweet spot is really how do you take a roadmap, how do you prioritize that roadmap based on the things you want to do and the actual sequencing that needs to happen from a technical perspective. How do you then select the right vendors for those projects and then ultimately manage those vendors to launch? And so that is usually a case where most of the companies that we work with don't have that expertise in house. And even if they do have some of that expertise, that the bandwidth, you have very few people who actually have that understanding, and bandwidth is stretched. And that's really where we come in, is to be a complementary extra pairs of hands, essentially, to get those projects from the PowerPoint slide into the field and into launched and live.
Okay, yeah. Sounds pretty complex. Thank you. And may I ask you, you're a co-founder of the Next Rivet. Where this idea came from to create a company like that? Is that was some personal issue that you've met, or you just analyzed the market? How did you start?
Well, I think it ties back to your previous question. What is Westfield and what do the Golden State Warriors have to do with our business? Myself and my co-founder Cal Spencer were both previous founding executives at Westfield Labs. Westfield Labs was a digital division of Westfield Shopping Centers that was launched back in 2012. And our charter there was actually very similar to Next Rivet, which is how do you essentially create complementary digital experiences in Westfield's physical shopping environments. This was a time when Amazon and other digital marketplaces had started to really get a foothold, and a lot of traditional shopping centers were nervous about, the obviously people shopping online, not visiting the mall anymore. And so it's really about how do you kind of stay up to date, stay with the times, offer consumers complementary digital services so they feel like the mall and the shopping center is a modern place to go to, and something that ties in with not only their offline habits but their online habits as well. And so while at Westfield, so my job, I ran business and corporate development for them, and Kyle ran product marketing, customer success. What that meant in the context of labs was, while we were a standalone group, we still outsourced most of the technology that we ultimately brought into the centers. And so my job was to go out and actually find those vendors, find the right companies we should be working with, get them under contract. I always joke that Kyle had the much harder job of actually operationalizing all those things within our center teams, educating our management teams on what they actually were spending money on, and ultimately getting those projects up and live. And so between the two of us, we essentially touch those things end to end. And I think that one of the other interesting things that happened when we were at Westfield was because we sit in Silicon Valley, so we actually we're based in San Francisco, obviously kind of epicenter of technology. We would have a lot of domestic and international shopping center retailer executive teams coming through the Bay Area on their innovation tech tours. So they're going to go meet with Google and Facebook and Twitter at the time, now X. As part of this roadshow, they would want to bring their executives on, and then they realized that we were actually based in San Francisco. We essentially became a stop on the tour for all these people who were creating these tours on behalf of these executives. And so Kyle and I were generally the ones presenting to these groups, and we were fairly open about what we were working on. And honestly, more often than not, at the end of these meetings, these executives would huddle and they'd turn to us and say, "Hey, do you think you guys can help us out too? We don't have a group like this. We don't have a team." We were at our peak, we were 60 or 70 people, which is massive from a shopping center perspective, although still very small from a tech company perspective when you talk about everything we were working on, from front end consumer experiences to back end technical operations. And so this was kind of in the back of our minds, like, hey guys, there's a business here, not just a cost center for Westfield. We went back to our leadership team more than once to propose this, but there was always some, the natural competitive concerns. And so ultimately, Westfield was acquired in around 2018 by Unibail-Rodamco, which is a French mall operator. And while we spun out first as a separate company, and then Kyle and I in late 2019 spun ourselves out to form Next Rivet, which is essentially to do what I was just talking about, which is do what we were doing at Westfield Labs, but on behalf of the properties around the rest of the world. And as a result, today we have clients in 15 countries and growing. Again, doing a variety of different technology projects, which I'm happy to dive into more.
That sounds great and impressive. And may I ask you, I understand about the malls and retailers, but how did you guys get to the stadiums?
I'm sorry. Oh, the stadiums. So, so Kyle, prior to Westfield, Kyle ran marketing for the Golden State Warriors. And so as part of that, he was charged with, looking at in addition to standard marketing, what's that digital layer that goes into the fan experience, from Golden State's perspective. And so, based on that experience, we've had some access to stadiums and other groups that are looking to kind of improve their fan experience through technology. And his background has given us access to do that.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And another question that I have that's regarding some technological challenges that you guys had, because you work with a lot of, as you said, third-party companies, kind of technological vendors. And what was the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, I think we actually solve one of the biggest challenges in working with a third-party vendor on behalf of our clients. Meaning, I think a lot of times vendors will come in, if you think about if you're sitting on the shopping center side or the client side, so to speak, and you're being approached by vendors all day, and maybe you find one you don't necessarily know how to evaluate those vendors side by side or from an apples comparison. But two, then, okay, once I get the vendor in house, how do I actually properly manage that vendor? Because a lot of times vendors will kind of use tech jargon and tech speak. They'll lay out, say, a schedule for launch. If they're delayed, they'll come up with reasons that the client won't actually understand. So they just have to kind of say yes. And for lack of a better term, we have enough experience where we can kind of call BS on a lot of these guys if we feel like they're just kind of sandbagging, their launch date because they haven't gotten their stuff, their act together. And I think, more specifically, or maybe more professional way to say is, we help clients manage vendors to ensure timely launch activities and timely progress as they move through that kind of implementation process. So that's really our focus.
Okay, thank you. And another question. Is there any technical limitations still exist in this area? Something that makes your life not so good as you want?
um, I think, I mean, look, there's always technical limitations. I think that's why new companies get launched every single day, right? I think the biggest challenge in the real estate world right now is understanding and how to harness AI. I think there's a couple of misnomers out there. One, um, I think there's the education of what AI actually is and what it does. I think people who are not in the tech world think of AI as like a standalone thing. It's a robot, it's a car, it's something that kind of exists on its own. Where in reality, AI is an ingredient brand, right, or ingredient technology. It exists within current technology and systems to ultimately improve those things and make them go faster, as you know. And so, I almost equate it back, and this will date me, but if you're old enough to remember when Intel used to run their advertising campaigns, they would always talk about Intel Inside, and you used to get laptops that had the little logo on them. It said, that this laptop that was made by IBM or Dell or other people has the Intel chip inside. And so that's really what it is. It's almost AI inside. And so help people understand that this isn't just this kind of thing out there. It's something that's just really just improving the technology that you have. But as a result, I think there's, I think the piece of AI that people understand the most are things like ChatGPT and now Gemini and Copilot for Microsoft, because you can actually use it as an end consumer. But I will say, from our clients' perspective, and the shopping center industry and the real estate industry is generally fairly conservative. Um, there's a lot of fear about where the data is going, and I understand some of that. But as a result, some people the pendulum has swung and said, we're not using AI at all, like, because they just don't understand what it is. And so I think everybody got really excited about it. Now everybody's getting really concerned about it. Obviously, you have something like DeepSeek from China coming in, which I think is a fascinating thing, not just because it's revolutionizing kind of the cost ecosystem around some of the large language models. But I also find it fascinating. Everybody was so worried about TikTok as something that might be stealing our data. Like, hey, welcome to like a large language model that could literally capture all this data around the world. Nobody's talking about that, but everybody wants to just hammer on TikTok. So anyway, my point is, there's I think a lot of misinformation, a lot of just people who are looking for more education, and I think there's a big opportunity there in our business and others, just to say, look, how do we level set on some of these things? Let alone how do we start to think about what are the most kind of practical implementations of this kind of technology?
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty open answer. Thank you. And we're definitely going to get back to this conversation about AI. But talking about the co-pilots and something more old-fashioned or old school, when I was browsing your website, I found another name, and that was Core Rivet, not a Next Rivet. Can you a little bit tell about that, please?
Yeah, Core Rivet is a new strategic brand and partnership that we launched in January of this year uh, with a company called Coresight Research. And so that's really the kind of the combination of our two brands, hence Core Rivet. What Coresight is really good at and really well known is providing market research and strategic services or strategic advisory in the retail and retail real estate space. And so where we're kind of getting into the hands-on implementation and project management of a lot of things and vendor selection, they're providing a complementary service upstream to really say, hey, how do you better understand the market? How do you better understand what people are doing in the industry and getting that education before then prioritizing what are the things you actually want to work on? And so there was always kind of a natural, and I hate this word, but it works here, kind of natural synergy between the two companies in terms of kind of where they left off and where we began. And we've worked together informally over the past couple of years, but this was kind of a formalization of that partnership. So the clients, as we come to a client jointly, they understand that we're kind of one service, one entity. We may be doing some things separately behind the scenes, but to them, it's a united front. And it's really just a formalization of what we've been already doing for the last couple of years for clients who really want that end-to-end suite of services that we can now provide.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And talking about your cooperation, did you guys somehow integrated your services into each other, or you just do your stuff separately without any integration and just provide results to your clients based on the results of your work separately?
It's a combination of both. We have some joint internal systems that we use together. In terms of what we do for clients, everything's fairly customized, and like I said, we're not providing proprietary technology to clients. We certainly provide They provide proprietary research and tools and methodologies that we all bring to the table collectively. But so it's not really a matter of a combined technical solution that we need to offer to the market. But certainly behind the scenes, we do some things. We are on some joint systems together to make the collaboration easier.
Okay, thank you. And again, let's get back to the question about AI and integrations. Did you guys already had a chance to integrate some of functionality into your system with AI, or do you have some plans if you didn't do this yet?
We use some AI based tools internally. I would say probably the best example of that would be for meetings. A lot of people kind of have these AI note taker apps that join meetings. We use a company called
Yeah, we're using that a lot.
Re.ai, and it really has been a game changer. I mean, um, I think the combination of so many things going on at one time, obviously, especially if you're alone in a meeting, trying to pay attention and speak and also take notes. A lot of times you miss things. Um, but then also, just as speaking for myself, as I get older, I don't remember a lot from that meeting last week, and so I think the reality is it's nice to be able to not just go back over your notes, but to be able to actually watch, have things summarized for you, have video vignettes where you can go back and actually, listen to the conversation again and listen to the context of the conversation while it's not just in your written notes, has been invaluable in terms of how we are able, I think, manage more workload and also just be more present in meetings instead of just furiously taking notes all the time. So that's probably the best example internally. Externally, the early AI implementations. There are a couple of examples. One are, AI related chatbots for clients to improve their customer service. So we had a shopping center client that was, had kind of a chatbot 1.0 where they were just, obviously a very, very programmed set of answers that you would provide a customer if they were asking for mall hours or directions or something like that. Now a lot of these chatbot companies have now integrated with an OpenAI or other chatbot platforms to now be able to actually provide a lot more information, but also just more of a natural language conversation. Like instead of, in the past, if you didn't put in the question exactly how it needed to be, you weren't going to get any results. Now you actually get a lot more results based on any different way you might ask a question. Additionally, it's just the more access to data that you give the bot, the more interesting and richer the information is going to be when you send that back to the customer. And so we've actually found where it's not just a nice to have from a kind of like question and answer perspective, but we've seen clients ultimately being able to reduce costs on the customer service side as a result, whether that's a smaller kind of customer service workforce, or just a more efficient way in which they're answering questions and getting back to consumers. And so there's real kind of ROI and cost savings as a result of doing some of these things. I would say the other side, more on the kind of B2B front, is you look at, and this is more kind of the harder core prop tech side of things, where you have these buildings now, and which are, the easiest way I can relate it to an end user is, a lot of us have Google Nest in our home, right? Which is kind of the early like intelligence for your home. What's the health of your home, right? What's the heat? What's going on? And obviously, it's gotten a lot more sophisticated since then. You now have these building management systems that are essentially kind of the nerve center for your building, whether it's HVAC and air conditioning to other maintenance things that are going on in the building. So you have kind of this ability now to have these smart buildings, and that's really where AI's come into play there, where again, it's not something you're not playing with AI specifically, but it is it is an ingredient in the technology to adjust things, to calibrate, to crunch data, so that your buildings are more efficient. As an example, over time. So I think those are two early use cases in terms of our experience with AI.
Yeah, we actually work with some companies who use AI exactly to run their businesses. It's kind of IoT, and not only some construction companies also use it a lot. And talking about the integration of AI, if let's say you would be able to develop some software of your dream that will make your life easier based on AI, what would it be?
Well, gosh, um, it's a hard question for us, simply because we're across so many different things. Um, I mean, again,
Pick one.
pick one. Um, well, I think certainly, like in our, in any consultant's business, as you're one, as you're managing projects, but two, as you're just doing client outreach. And there's a ton of companies out there now that are trying to use AI for more efficient kind of CRM outreach, database management, et cetera. And some are actually doing a pretty good job. But we're also a fairly specialized industry, and so I would say, better outreach, more consistent outreach, lead generation, some of those things would be interesting, because that would save a lot of time. I think that's the biggest thing that I think AI has helped us with, is just the time savings, whether it's writing certain things. I've practically written a press release using AI. I've written, essentially gotten good guidance on legal clauses using AI. So and obviously there's a lot of marketing copy you can quickly generate. I think the key thing is you have to know what it is, and also know when you get an AI response, whether it's good or bad. I think that's the experience that comes with using AI properly versus
You,
just kind
you
of,
can apply this to any type of technology.
yeah,
You need to
right.
know how to use it.
You know how to use it, but also have the experience to know, okay, for example, in a legal clause, is that a good one or a bad one, or do I need to rewrite it, or et cetera? So I think it's always kind of like thinking of AI as your sidecar, not your replacement, is going to be key. So I don't know. Sorry, back to your original question. I think the certainly the lead gen side of things would be interesting for us from a core business perspective. Um, and then, again, our focus is really more external focused, so much more than it is internal focused.
Yeah, that sounds pretty fair. And talking about some near future, let's say for the next 5 years, how do you think, what kind of impact AI will have for the companies like Next Rivet?
Well, I think it's gonna have the impact for us is the impact for our clients, right? So it's gonna be, you're going to continue to see AI built into everything. I think people will get more savvy about it. I think people will start to adopt it at a faster rate, especially in our industry. I always joke in the real estate industry, like, in technology in general, companies in general, except for the very kind of ones on the cutting edge, everybody wants to be the first to be second, right? Everybody wants to be, I want to be on the cutting edge, but I want to know who else did it so I can justify it to my boss that somebody actually has done this before.
It's
And
better
the real
learn on somebody's mistakes.
right? But in the real estate industry, it's like everybody wants to be the first to be about 15th, right? I want to see 10, 15 companies do this before, because again, it's just the nature of the beast. It's a more conservative, predictable ROI, predictable returns industry. And so, I think as we see some of those barriers break down, I think more understanding from executive teams and legal teams on kind of what actually works in the AI realm, that you'll start to see more adoption. And I would imagine, there's going to be, most of the technology that's adopted over the next 5 years is going to have some form of AI built in. I just think that's, again, it's an ingredient that's not going away. Um, so I think it's kind of in the wheelhouse of everything we do for the next 5 years.
How do you think would be able AI to replace that business and that services that you guys provide completely, let's say in decade?
Um, no, I don't think so. There are certain things, as you kind of collate information and gather information, that I think you can start to do some of that kind of, um, heavy lifting kind of administrative side of things more efficiently, and maybe companies don't need us for all the research or some of the things that we're doing on their behalf. But the reality is, like I said, somebody has to still has to still be a human that distills this and calls and knows kind of is able to parse through what's kind of accurate information, what's not. There's still not everything is just available, in the cloud or online. There's still, conversations you need to have with those companies if you're doing vendor research for analysis, for example. And so there's still a lot of custom things that have to get done. And again, AI is going to assist, but I think for foreseeable future, we are not concerned that AI is going to take our jobs. I think it only helps us work with our clients more efficiently and have them, use our expertise on things that are kind of where they leverage our expertise, not just our ability to get things collated and get some of the behind the scenes things done.
Okay. Talking about the future, is there any projects on the horizon that makes you feel excited about for the next Rivet?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think, I think it's going to get, I think I touched on the chatbot thing. I think a lot more of that customer service is going to get integrated into, existing or other properties, I should say, and a lot more. Those bots are going to have access to a lot more information than they have today, which is going to make them that much more interesting. I get excited about the video analytics space that leverages a lot of AI. So being able to understand not just the number of people who come into your property, but actually where they go on property. An example being most malls today have kind of basic door counters. They may have put in some systems over the years, but most don't have understanding. They may have heat maps in terms of where people go, but they don't necessarily have understanding truly down to an accurate count of what percentage of people who were in the common area of this mall actually went into a physical store. And that has so many, there's a lot of impact there from a leasing perspective, as and whether that kind of good and bad, right? So the landlord's always going to say there's tons of traffic, and the retailer's going to say I'm not getting enough traffic. But now when you actually have real data, you can understand, is that a mall problem, or is the mall sending a ton of traffic in a store and the retailer is just unable to convert that traffic.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. My friend is running small business in the mall, so yeah, been discussing with him his problem. Yeah,
yeah, and it's not to create a more adversarial relationship, because there's always this natural tension, right, between the landlord and the tenant, because the tenant wants the lowest rent possible and the landlord generally wants the highest, and so there's always this fear of sharing data and transparency. But the more that they can actually have conversations around real data, I think that gets interesting. And so that's the leasing side of things. You could also apply the same concept to the the advertising that exists in the shopping centers. That retail media in general has taken on a lot more focus over the last couple of years, and you've seen a lot more dynamic advertising within properties themselves, moving away from just kind of static, what we call tombstone advertising panels that kind of sit throughout the mall, to much more dynamic screens, 3D screens, etc., 3D advertising. And so then understanding the traffic flows by those things too is gonna help from an advertising measurement perspective. And then all the way down to an operational perspective, right? If I have actual counts of where people are going in the mall, say for example, an easy example would be
food court.
I send
That's where every single person goes.
Yeah, food court, right? So food court, but let's say, not to be like, let's say there are restrooms near the food court, and I service those restrooms every 4 hours. Now, based on actual counts, you could trigger more frequent maintenance if you saw that X amount of people had gone into the use the restrooms, knowing that usage over time means we've got to clean the bathrooms more frequently. And so that's just a basic example, but I think one that everybody understands is now you're doing predictive analytics on maintenance and some of these other things, whereas before it was very reactive analytics.
Yeah, and right now the data is a key.
Yeah.
Everybody were talking about a couple of years ago, and now people keep talking about this even more because of the data that you need to feed to LMSs like LMSs, sorry. And yeah, that's very important. And it feels like we're running out of time. So, first of all, David, thank you for the conversation. But before we're going to end it up, I just want to ask you how our listeners can get in touch with you. Because there's not a
Yes.
lot of guests from our podcast been dealing with the stadiums and malls. So, you're kind of unique person. That's why please share your contacts.
Right. I always try to convince my wife I'm a unique person as well. So it's so our URL is just
Listen, she's your wife. That's why you already convinced her.
I feel like I still need to do it on a daily basis. So it's my email is just david at nextrivet.com, NEXTRIVET. Our website is www.nextrivet.com. Again, NEXTRIVET.com. And really just, please feel free to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And look forward to having some conversations if people are interested.
Okay, thank you for sharing your contacts. And the last thing, what would you say to our listeners? What kind of final statement would close this episode today?
I would say that if you're AI is the kind of is the thing that will be here for many years. Quantum computing is also getting really fascinating, and so I think what's really interesting about quantum is that it is not easily understandable. It doesn't make a lot of sense from a practical perspective, and so and what that means is the computing power that we have is about to get a lot more interesting, a lot faster. It will work alongside AI. It will work alongside traditional computers. But as much as everybody's excited about AI, and they should be, I think we're also about to see a step change in the processing power in terms of the massive amounts of data that we can actually sift through, which was kind of previously impossible with our current computer infrastructure.
All right.
How's that?
That was good. So, it was pretty solid. It was pretty long, and that was good. So, David, thank you for being our guest today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing all the insights and information about not just your company, but the market in general from your perspective. I wish you all the best, and I wish all the best for the Next Rivet. We're going to launch that episode very soon, and after that, we're going to get another one. So, thanks, our listeners. Folks, we're not going to leave you for a long time. We'll get back to you very soon. David, say ciao for our listeners, and we're going to end it up.
Right. Thanks, Yurii. Really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you too. Folks, have a good one, and ciao for now.